Nobody here yet. Hi, I'm by myself. Nobody's here. Hi. Hi, Janice. So this live is to discuss the filing Kathleen made today. I'm not going to read through it. I've done that already on Stephen Avery Project. So if you want it all read to you, you need to go there and read it or watch it. I don't want to read through all of it again. Can I copy this into here or not? We do have it posted everywhere, so you can get it yourself. I don't know if I do this, if you'd be able to watch or to read it from that. I don't know. So, hey, Tracy and Kitty and Christy's gonna make me sing 8, 6, 7, 5. And hi, Dondi. No, yeah, that thing I posted, you can't get it from there. So if somebody else can get the link and post it there. So did you guys read it? Do you know what her filing is? It's so in a nutshell, Claire, Ben, and Glenn are here. So in a nutshell, the beginning of it goes all about how there was no reason for the state to respond to her filing period, and she goes through all the legal mumbo jumbo on why that is, and why there was no requirement for the state to respond, and that even in the state's response, they did things wrong and said things wrong, and so she goes through and proves those things. And it's more talk about the bones, that did they do it on accident, or was it intentional that they now got rid of those gravel pit bones? So, and then she talks about, because in the state's response, they were trashing the rapid bone DNA ID testing thing. And so she was showing how what the state said about it is not true. So then it was citing other cases and stuff that had used that rapid DNA IDing. So we still await for the court to respond on what they'll do with Stephen's case. Will they give him a new trial? Will they just let him go? Or will they say no and try and find some excuses again on why they're right and she's wrong? Yeah, Claire, so this is about that Kathleen filed today, a response to the state's response. So we did a live on Stephen Avery Project, and we shared the link to that video in here where we read over the whole thing. And so now it's just if anybody has any questions on it. And not a lawyer, so don't ask me legal stuff. I don't pretend to be a lawyer, not going to pretend to be a lawyer. From the one time now that I've read through this, Kathleen says some things that I found really humorous, at her taking shots at the state, because all the usual suspects were part of giving those bones to the Hallback family. So they all knew they gave those bones back in 2011. And then we're just playing dumb with Kathleen when she initially inquired about them. Oh, and the filing also talks about, because the state claimed that they had sent all documents to an investigator, and so that they weren't hiding that they gave this stuff to the hall back in 2011. So now in Kathleen's filings, she's pointing out that's not true, because the the whole thing was 1,100 pages and they only received 66. So she has affidavits from the investigator who received the stuff, who never even opened it, and then he gave it to a clerk at Kathleen's office, who there's an affidavit from them as well. So it's, again, the state is lying. So, Claire says, so will this hold everything up further? Do we know when the court will respond? Don't know when the court will respond. I'm always confused about, I hear these, there's a 30-day to respond and a 60-day to respond and a 90-day to respond. And then there's, when the courts have indefinite. So I'm not sure. So somebody smarter than me, let us know if you know how long Kathleen has to file. Let's see, what messages am I getting here? Sorry, I know this is boring. Okay, just making sure that wasn't something I needed to talk about here on it. So I don't know when the court will respond. It's just always a whole lot of waiting. Kayla says, plus that voicemail that I found extremely telling of how they have acted through this entire case. And that was something that was in there as well, in this filing, talking about paying the money to get the voicemail. What that voicemail is, though, I don't know, because there's the voicemail that they stupidly put on Kathleen's phone, but I don't know. Sorry, I'm scrolling through here now trying to find the affidavits. Because there was the affidavit from, I'm missing it. But there's an affidavit in here asking, paying to get a voicemail. I'm going the wrong way. This is the affidavit of Selden. This is the clerk that opened the package. All right. So this is the one on the voicemail. Calumet County Sheriff's Department. So the sheriff, Mark Ott. And then it's going to James Kirby, who's the investigator. And it says, regarding public records request dated February 20, 2017. Dear Mr. Kirby, please accept this correspondence as the Calumet County Sheriff's Department's response to your public records request dated February 20, 2017, wherein you requested a copy of the recording taken off, wrong off, it's only OF, so it's of, not off a voicemail message from an answering machine at the residence of 4433 County Road B, Manitowoc, Wisconsin. As referenced in the sheriff's deputy police report, the recording was copied by Detective Jacobs of the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department. Any duties conducted by Detective Jacobs would be record of the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department. You were advised that you may challenge the Sheriff's Department partial denial of your requests in an action for mandamus pursuant to Wisconsin statute blah blah, or by application of the Calumet County District Attorney or Attorney General. If you have any further questions or concerns relating to your request or the Sheriff's Department's response herein, please contact our counsel, Kimberly Tenerelli, at blah blah. So I don't know what that voicemail is. Anybody know what that voicemail is? who lives at 4433 County Road B, Manitowoc. Kayla says, plus that voicemail that I found extreme. Oh, I read that already. Yeah, the one for Kathleen. Sherry says, the state is lying yet again. Gosh, I'm so shocked. Not. Yeah. Rick and Karen say, thank you for what you are doing. You rock, girl. Well, thank you. Janice says, is it just me or something wrong with the video? Oh, am I freezing up? Oh, but Claire says video is fine for her. Kayla says the one where old boy called Kathleen instead of who he was originally calling. I know, that was hysterical. And Kayla continues with about the bones and until they knew if they were there or not before they called Kathleen back. Janice said, I fixed it. It was me. Okay, good to know. Doreen says, pisses me off the time to respond on any of it. If someone has hired Kathleen, their case should take precedence over and above anything else. Life is at stake. Ugh, yeah. Julie says, I missed most of previous, but watched enough to hear that KZ is out to kick some serious ass. Yeah. I do recommend, if you don't want to listen to me on Stephen Avery Project, read it for yourself. I know it's long, but there's a couple of real jewels in it, I thought. Claire says, interesting, not the KZ voicemail then. No. Sharon says, is that zippers? I don't know. The address is 4433 County Road B in Manitowoc, if y'all want to look it up. So yeah, people questioning, what is it, zippers? And Julie says, could it be the missing voicemail to the zippers, but claiming it was Barb? So yeah, it's 4433 County Road B in Manitowoc. If you guys want to use the Googler. So jewels. It's hard for me to remember the jewels without, I really should go through and read it again and then take the notes on the jewels. But, but she's really slapping them down on how legally there was no reason for them to file. And so there was no legal reason for the state to respond to her filing, that it should just be going to the court, and the court shouldn't have the state shouldn't be proposing anything to the court. That's what she's saying at the beginning. And then there's just a lot of slapdowns on how they knew those bones were given to the Hallback family and they have intentionally destroyed evidence. So, stuff that we know, but it's just great when you see, Superwoman Zellner putting it in writing. Kathy says it's a single family house. I'm asked for the address again. 4433 County Road B as in boy. Julie says, I skipped around and caught some juicy stuff. We'll go back and watch all of it later. Caitlin says, it's the zippers, according to Google. Okay, so they wanted the zipper voicemail. So it's just more waiting. But, in Kathleen doing what she does, pointing out all these errors. Whoops, wrong thing. When was this voicemail taken? Doesn't say anything on here on this letter about the voicemail. All right, so as I'm scrolling through this, so Kathleen says, without first seeking leave, the state filed an unauthorized and unsolicited response to defendant's post-conviction motion. The defendant now seeks leave to reply to the state's unauthorized and unsolicited response because there are issues and matters of record raised by the state which defendant disputes. So what she's saying is the state shouldn't have responded at all, but now in their response, there's things that Kathleen needs to rebut, is what she's saying there. Julie says the state was not requested or required to respond to KZ. Thus, KZ filed a motion to leave, requesting the court to disregard the state's response. Michelle says, I thought Teresa left a voicemail on the Zips, but I don't remember where I read that. She did, but there's always this confusion now of voicemail that was left when they've played it. Is that really voicemail that was left at the Barb's house? Or was it on Zippers? So let me scroll in through here. Just trying to scroll through this real quick. Sorry. So, and then, so after the first thing that I was reading there, it just goes into rebutting the state's response. Rick Karen says, were any bones traces tested and confirmed? As far as I know, nothing has been 100% confirmed that it's Teresa. I've only seen things say that it was consistent with Karen Hallback, the female line in Karen Hallback's family, right? Nothing has ever been for sure Teresa. Julie says the voicemail would have changed the timeline for Teresa and her whereabouts. I believe Teresa went to Zippers after Stevens. Correct. That's what, if you look into, you can go into the old documents and all that, where when law enforcement first started looking for Teresa, they said Zipper was going to be the last stop. I believe what I had thought something that had happened is because Zippers was a hustle shot, not something she had on her schedule. I believe she initially intended to go to the Zippers, but then couldn't find it. And so then went to Steven and then went to Zippers, is what I had thought. But again, now, if you're going to say that she went to Zippers last, then Kathleen's reenactment video of Bobby getting her at Cuss Road, but she had, so she's been to Zippers because the wife, I can't remember what her name right now is, had testified about seeing her and everything. So which is it? First or last? But you can hear, because there's audio of law enforcement at that time too. So you'll hear audio of, I can't remember who it was, saying that Zipper was the third stop. Shelley, I have no idea if there's a time frame for the court. I can never remember on all that. Caitlin says, can someone remind me who the Zippers are? Were they the one of Teresa's comments that wanted her to come by that day? Yes. Zippers, was it her name Mary Jo or Mary Ellen or Joellen? Joellen Zipper, right? That's her name. So, and then her husband is George Zipper. And then their grandson, right? It's their grandson is Jason Zipper. And it was Jason's car that was there with the for sale sign on it. And Teresa showed up there for a hustle shot. Kayla says, it's amazing how she's logically dismantled all of Manitowoc's corruption. I can't wait to see what Sweaty or his daughter Wet Nurse puts on social media, any of them for that matter. Christine says, you can hear me, but I'm all fuzzy. Am I? Or is my voice, because my voice has been getting gravelly. Kristen says, refresh my memory. Wasn't one of the voicemails lost before trial? I think there's a whole lot of confusion on that. Lynn, are you still here? Because I know Lynn was watching, and Lynn is like the expert on Her mind is a steel trap, and she remembers everything on this case. I learned stuff 3 years ago and I forgot it, you know. But I know there was some confusion on voicemails that they played. Was that from the Zippers or was that from Barb's? Julie says, but Bobby could have followed her to Zippers after she left. There is when everything may have happened. The theories are many. Well, I don't know, obviously, that area well. And if you've followed my live that I got busted for trespassing, you would see I drive around and around and around, not knowing where I'm going. But 3 years ago, when I thought the George Zipper was the killer, I went to the Zipper's house. And so to go to the Zippers from the salvage yard, I turned right on 147. And if you're going to Cuss Road, you turn left. So, but they wrap around this way. When I went to the Zippers from the salvage yard, I turned right onto 147 and then right onto that Jambo Creek Road. And that's how I got there. Liberty, yes, Jason is deceased now. Oh, my picture is fuzzy. That's because my picture is fuzzy because of the window open. Shelly says, yes, voicemail left on Zippers. Julie says, lots of voicemails were deleted by Ryan and Mike. Correct. Lynn, thank you. What's the deal with the voicemail now? They're wanting the voicemail from the Zippers. So what do you recall what's going on with the voicemail at the Zippers? Was it deleted? Is it confused with the one at Barb's? What's the story on that? If you can update us on that. And thank you in advance. Tom says, hate that Kathleen has to waste her time responding to the state who is trying to defend their indefensible position. Don't hate on that because you know Kathleen loves it, you know, because she was able to again show that they're lying and covering stuff up. So I'm sure, you know, she gets the warm fuzzies, getting the opportunity to again smack down the state. So the thing to hate is Stephen has to sit in prison through all of this, you know, and let's get the move on it. Doreen says, it's all just so sad. Yeah, I agree. Julie says, oh, and Stephen saw Bobby go left. Right. So left goes to Q, you know, so you would turn left on 147 and then left on Q and then left on Cuss Road. Tom says, but boy, does Kathleen do it well. Yep. Rick Karen says, how could this even be a case? It's all speculation with no DNA bone confirmation, correct? Mistrial, no body, no weapons, no DNA, etc. Teresa could still be alive then. Well, there are people that believe Teresa's alive. I'm not one of them. But if Teresa turned up alive, I wouldn't go, oh my God, I'm so surprised by that. You know, because this case is so bizarre. Caitlin says, the state digs themselves a hole every time they talk, let them. And Caitlin says, a deeper hole, rather, LOL. All right, so here's Lynn. The Zipper voicemail was not included, nor was it confirmed that the voicemail that is said to have been on Barb's phone confirmed to actually have been on her phone. Okay, thank you. So that's what he was paying for and doing a Freedom of Information Act. He wants the Zippers voicemail is what is in Kathleen's filing today. So, let's see. What does Kathleen say? Mr. Avery has submitted and renews his submission that the sufficient reason for which he could not raise this claim earlier is the state's concealment of Deputy Hawkins' September 20, 2011 report and the updated evidence disposition ledgers that reflect the state's return of human bone fragments located in the gravel pit to the Hallback family. Notably, the state did not argue that Mr. Avery would be procedurally barred because he had not raised this claim in a motion before the Court of Appeals. Because that's something else the state is trying to claim, that, well, Stephen didn't ask for this before, so he doesn't get to ask for it now. And so Kathleen, again, is putting the smackdown on, no, you're wrong. He can and has, and you covered it. So when you're supposed to turn everything over to his attorneys and you leave that off, how can he say, I want this stuff tested? What's this evidence? Why did this go there? When you hide it from them. Let me see if you guys said anything. Doreen says, and didn't Stephen say he saw Teresa turn left too when she left his place after taking the pictures? I don't remember which way they said turned, but yeah, left is to Cuss Road, right is to Jambo Road. And so the Jambo Road is the one that lines the Avery side on the other side, where there's also houses there, and then there's gravel pit across the street from it. And the houses on Jambo Creek Road, that's where you have witnesses say they had seen the RAV4 driving that way. Julie says, now I understand why the state's response made KZ smile as she tweeted. Her hands must have been tapping and ringing in anticipation at the opportunity to fight this tooth and nail. Kitty says, KZ gave them all a chance to work with her in the beginning, saying there was no corruption. They're not giving her a choice now. She has to put it all out there. Excellent point, Kitty. Sharon says, I understand the Zip voicemail mysteriously disappeared, yet there was a voicemail to the Yandas asking for directions. Doesn't make sense since she knew the Avery Road address already. I think the Yanda is not real, but the state did the old switcheroo and called the Zip voicemail the Yanda voicemail. Shelley says, just thinking, if I were the person or persons involved in this, I'd been long gone by now, off the grid. Well, hasn't Bobby left social media? I know he's still in Wisconsin, but yeah. So let me look to see if I can see if any of Kathleen's big jewels stand out to me just in scrolling this. So in this case, the state first argues Mr. Avery's claims are barred because he failed to raise the issue of retesting the Manitowoc County gravel pit bones in his direct appeal and post-conviction motions. Here, the state misapprehends Mr. Avery's claims. In this post-conviction motion, Mr. Avery is not stating a sufficiency of evidence or ineffective assistance of counsel claim relating to inadequate testing of bone fragments. Rather, Mr. Avery's claims pertain to the constitutional violation stemming from the state's destruction of the human bone fragment evidence. The retesting of the bones is relevant to the constitutional claim on the matter of the exculpatory nature of the destroyed evidence. However, the retesting of the bone fragments is not a claim in its own right. Therefore, notwithstanding the Court of Appeals directive to resolve Mr. Avery's claims on the merits, that Mr. Avery did not raise a bone testing issue earlier does not preclude him from raising a constitutional destruction of evidence issue now. On this point, the state argues that Avery could have raised a claim regarding the destruction of bone fragments in the Court of Appeals in connection with a prior remand order. The state's argument fails for two reasons. One, its premise is factually untrue, and two, even if its premise were true, a prior motion to expand the scope of a remand order is not cognizable as a prior post-conviction motion, as contemplated in the Wisconsin Supreme Court in Escalona Naranjo. Now back to you guys. Shelley says, that's why KZ was thrilled with the state replied on April Fool's Day. Hello, Michelle. Kitty says, would that left turn put her near the Mirabel Caves where stuff was found but never put into evidence? I've never gone to the Mirabel Caves, so I'm not familiar of where it is. Michelle says, I understand that pelvic bones are a big issue, but what about all of the files that were on Bobby's computer and not evidence was withheld? Has there been a motion filed on that? Seems to me that would have been grounds for an automatic mistrial. It would be just as important as the bones. Is it something I've overlooked and I'm not seeing, or is it no longer an issue? I know Kathleen asked for that computer. And then, but the state got to it first, and so stuff was removed. So yeah, that should be a big issue too, that they've covered up the nasty stuff that was on Bobby's computer that Barb and the family keep defending on. It was a community computer that was in Bobby's room, and all this stuff was being done only when Bobby is home because everybody else is at school or at work. Julie says, when you say jewels, do you mean juicy tidbits that deserve stars, like Kirby only getting 64 pages and not the over 1,000 pages requested? Correct. That's a jewel. So she's got all this proof to discredit them saying that they sent everything because they only got the 66 pages. Oh, hi, Paul. Paul says, did anyone look where Bobby fishes, see what might be there? I don't know if Bobby fishes all that much. He hunts. He likes to shoot things. So, in speaking of fishing, Paul Kaluzinski is selling his boat. We talked about it in a prior live. So, if anybody would like to buy Paul's boat, it's $6,000 with a whole lot of gear and a whole lot of new stuff. And Paul will take you out onto Lake Michigan or wherever so you can see that the boat is in great shape. Paul again says, hi, Jax. Hi, Paul. Paul Kaluzinski, everyone. For those that don't know, he is the father of Melissa Kaluzinski, another client of Kathleen Zellner. And Melissa's case is so very personal to me. Melissa is a very, very sweet girl, and there's no way she did what she was accused of. And in her case, there's all kinds of corruption as well to this poor girl. Tom says, Jax, has Stephen ever said anything about who he thinks the killer is, plus what his relationship with Bobby is like? Everything Stephen says to me currently is Bobby. Bobby and Scott to some extent, and he's not sure what Barb's role is. But the thing that Stephen says every time is he's going where the evidence goes. If the evidence takes him to a family member, it takes him to a family member. It's awful, but it's also awful for a family member to let him sit there and rot. And not only does family just let him sit there and rot, until Making a Murderer came out, they were all saying, other than his parents, that Stephen was guilty. So they were all happy for Stephen to take the fall for this. But now when there's a lot of credible evidence showing that Bobby did it, it's how dare they? And the family's all, we have to, protect Bobby and Barb and Scott. Nobody's allowed to talk about them or say any of this stuff. But we support Stephen. How do you support Stephen when all the evidence points to these people let Stephen and Brendan, who they say is their top priority now that they're going to cut Stephen off, these people are letting Brendan sit in prison as well, except for Ellen and Dolores. Ellen and Dolores are the only people in that family that have supported Stephen the whole time. Debbie says, what was on the computer? Lots of disgusting child porn, killing children, killing women, raping women. Teresa Hallback's name's on there, RAV4's on there, DNA is looked into, a lot of disgusting stuff that Bobby should be in prison just for what was on the computer. But I believe the state allowed him to get away with that as long as he became their star witness. And hi, Chris in Liverpool. Michelle says, in Making a Murderer 2, she had 2,100 pages of entries on his computer. Holy smokes. And Paul saying hi to everyone. And Dondi is praying for Paul. So Kitty's saying, I think the caves area need to be looked at more then. Thank you. Well, how close, I should look into how close Waupun is to there, because when I go visit Stephen, maybe I can take a field trip over there, depending on timing. Paul said, Bobby, why he take blood test? I don't think Bobby's ever been tested, right? People replying to each other and talking directly to Paul. Michelle says, you think they would have wanted him to win the 36 million? Well, here's what I think. This is just from my brain and from things that were kind of said to me back when I was friends with the family and the family said things to me. I believe they think that Stephen going to prison, that $36 million case would still continue, but Stephen would be in prison and they would get it. And that Stephen would have no say on his $36 million. So, and looking at myself now in here, it's like, yeah, I am kind of fuzzy. It's like, it reminds me of if you watch Saturday Night Live and when they would make fun of The View, and Barbara Walters on The View always needed to have this special lens on the camera, and they Vaseline the lens or whatever, so she would look softer and you wouldn't see her wrinkles and stuff. So, yeah. Paul says, just clear his name, Bobby should take blood test. Yeah, well, Bobby should do a lot of things and doesn't. Mickey says, family like that, who needs enemies, right? Dondi says, I agree, Jax, about what you just said about Bobby. Kristen said, when Stephen gets out, he needs to take his parents and leave the United States, get far away from that family. Well, in one of my recent calls with Stephen, he did say he plans on leaving Wisconsin. He didn't say country, but he does, you know, where before he was going to stay in Wisconsin. Now he says he's going to leave. Paul, since if you're still on here, do you know how long the court has to respond to rule on this? Is there a time limit or no? Paul's the expert here, since he's been dealing. His daughter's been in prison for 10 years for something she didn't do. So he's been through this game of, you know, over and over again too. Kristen says, we would be happy to have him in Canada. I think Canada would be a good place for him, because, you know, him and his dad just like to be in the woods. I don't know that Stephen is really a hunter. Well, and actually he couldn't have been a hunter all those years because he was a felon. That's what they got him on, is because the trailer he lives in is owned by Raleigh Johnson. And actually I just asked Stephen about that on the phone too, that Raleigh still owns that. You know, so that property and trailer and garage and everything is still owned by Raleigh Johnson, who Stephen says Raleigh is a great guy. He's a friend of his dad's. So the 22 that was hanging in the trailer that Stephen and Jody were living in is Raleigh's. But because of Stephen's prior with his cousin, Sandy Morris, when he chased her and had her pull over and he pointed a gun at her, that's what made him a felon, that he is not allowed to own a firearm. So now when they wanted to take him into custody for Teresa, that's what they initially cited him on, because that's something that, you know, he's a felon and can't have a gun. So he's so he hasn't hunted in how long. So I don't know if, shooting things is really his cup of tea. And if he would be doing that, and would he just be fishing? Chris, no, Kristen, I read yours. Valerie says, I'm coming in late. Will this stay up so I can start from the beginning? Yes, everything from here on out is going to stay up. I only deleted the one because my haters keep, they have their spies in here, or they're in here themselves with their fake names. And so it was kind of a haha, now you can't get it. It was just me being a bitch. So, but the rest will stay up because I don't care if they see anything I say because I speak the truth. Kitty says it's 5.6 miles from the salvage yard. Okay. And how far is the salvage yard from Waupun Correctional? Isn't that a 2-hour drive? Still 2? Michelle says, oh my God, that makes sense. Julie says the cul-de-sac area, Cuss Road, I believe, had several law enforcement there for a few hours on November 4. Or was it the same day they found the RAV? I don't recall when they were on Cuss Road. Kristen says, how about those puppy scratches on Bobby's back? Those didn't look consistent with puppy scratches to me, nor me. They were too far apart. And yeah, there's, so Kathleen debunked that as well. Michelle says, so his niece made statements that led them to Brendan, and he was told what to say by Barb. Is this true? Okay, so what you're talking about is Kayla. So the police had questioned Brendan previously, but now Kayla, wanting some attention, made up these lies about Brendan crying and losing weight and all that stuff. And so then they came back around to Brendan. And also Brendan was always a focus of theirs because Brendan is alibi. So Stephen saying he was burning stuff in his fire pit, which they wanted to say was Teresa. Well, he's saying he was with Brendan. So now they have to tie Brendan to this. And I believe when they initially went to Brendan, they wanted Brendan to just implicate Stephen. But because Brendan is of low IQ and not understanding what they're trying to get him to say, it just came to then implicating Brendan being a part of it. So Barb telling Brendan what to say, that I don't believe. I don't want to believe that Barb is that evil, that she willingly led Brendan to the slaughter. I hope not. I really hope not. Hayden says, hi, Jax, thanks for all this, and thank you for being here. Tom says, oh, good, glad Stephen is going to leave that state. Yeah, and, and his parents will go too. So as for where he'll go, I'm not asking. And even if he told me, I wouldn't say. If Stephen tells people, that's for Stephen to do. I really want, when Stephen's free, for him to be able to ride off into the sunset with his parents and not be followed by press and fans and crazy stalker people. Sharon says, Julie, I thought it was the 7th. Haley says the Avery family would do great in northern BC. Yeah. Okay, some people replying to each other. Paul says, ask me again. Paul, how long does the court have to respond to this? Do you know if there's a certain time limit that the court has, or is it whenever the court feels like it? More people replying. Heidi says, hey there, just got back from dental appointment. Well, hope you're doing okay and no cavities. Look, Mom, no cavities. People talking to Paul. Valerie is saying, thank you for the shout out and the info. Well, thank you again for being here. Haley says, hi, hater. Say hi to Loose Lynn for us. Paul says, ask me again. I'm back. Hopefully you heard me. How long does the court have to respond? Debbie says, so who is Stephen to you? I'm just curious. Do you speak to his mom and dad? My heart literally breaks for them. Debbie, I'm just a supporter. And so I was friends with family members at different points. Now they all hate me. I have visited Dolores and gave her money at one point. I used to talk to Stephen on the phone. Then I didn't talk to him for a couple of months. Now he started calling me again a couple weeks ago, and he just added me to the list. So I'll be visiting Stephen within the next week. And yeah, everybody's hearts break for Stephen's parents. And I told Stephen how his parents are, that's like one of the biggest questions we're asked is how is his parents doing? Lynn says, also, the gun that they say shot Teresa does not have the velocity for the bullet to do what the state says. Correct. How does a bullet with wood and paint on the victim's DNA on it when they said bullet can't travel with the velocity to create the damage done to said bone? Right, Lynn. And we've done that before. And my boyfriend's not here. You know, this is almost 2:00 in the afternoon and he's at work. But my boyfriend is an NRA instructor. So I've had him before show me the sizes of these bullets and then the holes they would make and the damage they would do. So yeah, the 22 that they're saying that would have gone completely through Teresa's head it wouldn't. Julie says, his puppy was only about 9 weeks old at the time. No way would its paws be wide enough to create those scratches. I agree. Michelle said, no, she told Kayla. Oh, that Barb told Kayla? No, Barb's not saying anything to Kayla. They hate Kayla. They're so mean to Kayla. And I was up there once. So I was in the salvage yard office and I was with Carla, her husband, Stacy, Barb, and Earl Avery. I don't believe Scott Todick was there that day, but I don't remember for sure. And they were ripping on Kayla. And it made me very uncomfortable that they were talking about that girl that way. So I know Barb is pissed at Kayla for saying that, but I don't believe she told Kayla in anything in advance to tell anybody. Excuse me. Jason said, well, I think Barb knew what they wanted to do. I'm still gonna think that she didn't. I'm thinking Barb knows something after the fact, but that she's living in denial because she doesn't want her son, any of her sons or her husband to be a part of it. So I think she's choosing ignorance. Kayla says, Barb is in no way near that smart to hatch a plan like that. Yeah, she's really not bright. Tom says, on Making a Murderer, during Stephen's trial, it shows Bobby had a cast on his arm while talking to one of the cops that interviewed Brendan, wondering what caused him to need that. Yeah, I don't have any idea. But the trial was a long time after Halloween. So whatever happened to his arm happened way after Teresa going missing. Michelle says, Barb fed Kayla statements. I don't think so, just because they don't get along. Valerie says, I don't think he should tell anyone, just disappear. I agree. Jason says, Barb knew to protect Bobby. That's what I believe. Yeah. April says, if you see all of Brendan's confession, you can see plainly that it's coerced. Well, that's why I'm just going to come out and say it. Who shot her in the head? So, and also just know that section too, they've tried to scrub it from the internet. It like disappeared in certain places where people would watch Netflix that you weren't seeing that part, and they would get it removed off of YouTube and all this stuff. The state really doesn't want you to see that. Just going to come out and say it. Who shot her in the head? Steven, because of course he's going to say that, but come on. What else? Punched her, cut her throat, cut her hair, guess. Yeah, state doesn't want you seeing any of that. Kristen says, investigators were probably high, giving each other when it was Brendan as his alibi. Young, developmentally slow equals easy to manipulate. Yes, because they tried to manipulate all of the Dassey boys. Brendan was just the susceptible one. Julie replying to Lynn on the guns. Kristen saying high-fiving each other. Yeah. Julie correcting her. Julie saying, I don't think Barb knew anything, but may have some thoughts about it now. Debbie says, you can clearly tell Brendan is special needs, and it's so scary being a mom with a son that has the same issues. He also does not make eye contact and puts hand over his mouth when being spoken to, as Brendan did. It boils my blood, this whole thinking does. I know, it's horrible. And that's why everybody should get a lawyer. I don't think it should just be minors. It shouldn't just be people that have low IQs or any kind of mental disability. We should all have a lawyer. Do not talk about a lawyer. I don't care if, well, here I go saying all that. And then in my whole trespassing thing, I didn't have a lawyer. So I guess I didn't take my own advice, but lawyer up. People should lawyer up. Greg says, I wonder how many other people are in our prison system that was wrongfully convicted. I don't think I would want to know because of just how horrible that is. I know there's been various things where people come out with a percentage or whatever, but that's just so sad on every level, not just murder convictions, because like another one of Kathleen's clients, Kent Pellegrini, he's in prison because his wife, not estranged wife, they were living together, have children, everything. She accused him of rape just so she could take everything. Easy way to get rid of him and get everything. So people in prison for drugs that shouldn't be there, and it goes on and on and on. People replying. Valerie says, wait, what in the actual fuck do they have against Kayla? That whole family does not like each other. They really don't. So like the first time I was going to the salvage yard that I was meeting with Carla there, she told me to message her an ETA as I got closer because she wasn't allowed to be at the salvage yard. She wasn't allowed on the property. So she was just going to pop in when I got there so she couldn't get caught there. So it's like, okay. So this one doesn't like this one and this one doesn't like that one. And so Kayla, Barb really blamed Kayla for turning the police on to Brendan. And then there's been fights they've had. I mean, like most recently when it was me and numbers, I can't remember if it was $600 or $900 was missing from Dolores's house. And right away, the family's blaming Kayla for it. So, and I've talked to Stephen about it, and Stephen does not believe it was Kayla and has suspicions on a different family member on who it is. So, but the family does this ebb and flow thing. They hate each other, then they're back together. They hate each other, and then they're back together. So they're really ignorant to Kayla, and then they like accept her. Kayla's been the only one that is full supportive of Dolores. Dolores is her grandma, and Kayla adores her grandma. You know, she will call Dolores her best friend. And so, like, Dolores can't visit Stephen that often because she's just physically not able. But when she goes, it's typically Kayla that's taking care of her, you know, pushing her in the wheelchair and such. You know, so Kayla is beyond sweet to her grandma. Oh, and there's Kristen saying the family was accusing Kayla of stealing money from Al and Dolores around Christmas. Yeah. And Paul is back and asking question. So again, Paul, if you haven't heard me, how do you know how long the court has to respond to Kathleen? People replying to each other and to Paul. Kitty says, Brendan said over 72 times, I don't know, or I didn't do it. And so did Paul's daughter, Melissa. Melissa was interrogated for 3 days. So Sharon says, Jax, do you believe Teresa was murdered versus accidentally killed, possibly at the farm or her house? Just looking at all angles. I've thought at one time that it was an accident, that Bobby was hunting and Teresa was pulled over taking a picture of a cow or something else in nature because she's a photographer. And Bobby accidentally shot her. And then the cover up happened. So if that comes out being what happened, I wouldn't be surprised by that. It's though, you know, when Kathleen put out her reenactment, she's showing that it was intentional. So I go by, you know, the breadcrumbs that Kathleen puts out for us. Michelle saying, I asked Sweaty Sweat. He said they did look at Bobby, but felt he had an alibi, which Scott had verified that he was in that place at that time. When I was emailing Sweaty Sweat, I asked him if Scott was the other suspect. When he collaborate Bobby's story, he then didn't respond and blocked me. Yeah, and I know they've done that before, and I know Carla has defended alibi. The alibi of the two suspects saying, oh, we passed each other, and I happened to look at my clock too, so I know the exact time we passed each other. Where then Bobby was going to hunt at Scott's, but Scott wasn't going to hunt at his place. He was going to hunt somewhere else. So, yeah, that's not a real alibi. Paul saying they did the same to Melissa. Yeah, about questioning for a long time, and she said no over and over and over again. I didn't do this. Haley says, yup, lawyer up. And if they ask you anything without one, you reply, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Get me my lawyer and repeat to every question. And Paul says, high five, just like Melissa. Yeah, they went after Melissa hardcore. Haley says, hey, was it the Averys who filed against you for trespassing? No. Well, no. It was Red Ant who actually called to report me, but he didn't even know about it until Carla tattled on me. So it's all because of Carla that he reported me for being on his property. And I thought about continuing it because he has no trespassing signs, but whatever. So we paid the $200 fine. My court date was actually today, but I paid the $200 fine and the extra $5 fee or whatever it was on it. So that's been paid up. And it doesn't mean I won't go again. I will be a repeat offender. Valerie says, isn't even 1% when you do the math on false guilty too many? Very true. That's why, Valerie, I used to be pro death penalty until all of this. And so now it's so hard to know who's truly really guilty. So I can't just say an eye for an eye at this point, because gosh, with your law enforcement framing people and such, it's, how do you know? Valerie says activism should not stop when Stephen gets exonerated. Oh, and it won't in my case. Paul says, because she knows something. Jax, can you see me? Yeah, I keep answering you, Paul. I'm responding to you. Do you not see me read your questions? Valerie says, well, that family dynamic has to be a blast at Thanksgiving and or Christmas. Yeah. Okay. So Paul says 90 days to 60 days. Okay. Kristen says, is there something I can watch about the Melissa case? Absolutely. You can go to YouTube and look up Blaming Melissa and Finding the Fight for Melissa. Those are 2 different 48 hours episodes. Kathleen Zellner also has it. She's got a page in her website that is just covering Melissa's case, and she's got those videos there as well. And she also has the last court date that we went to, because the state of Illinois allowed for the first time cameras in the courtroom. And they did that for Melissa's case, because Melissa's case is a big deal here in Illinois. And it's also gone nationally, that there's people all over the world on Melissa's case. So Blaming Melissa is the first episode. And then they did an update that's called The Fight for Melissa. And you see Kathleen in those. And you see Paul in his pink tie. Whenever you see Paul go to things for Melissa, he's in a pink tie, which is Melissa's favorite color. Kristen says, well, given the heinous things on Bobby's computer, I believe he saw her that day and just saw an opportunity that he couldn't pass up. Well, he was obsessed with Teresa, because Stephen has said on the other times when Teresa would be there, Bobby would try and tease Stephen or whatever and say, oh, your girlfriend was here today or something like that. Paul says, but it could be 10 days or judge could take months. See, I can never, I don't retain numbers well. I don't know what it is about my brain, but that's why I get so confused always on this. It could be 10 days, it could be 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, or whenever they feel like it. It could be years. I don't know. Debbie says, what about the police that found everything, but were not supposed to be on the property? Yeah, I know. The Manitowoc Sheriff's Department should not be there. And it isn't a coincidence that, oh, look, they find a key after you've searched 1,000,000 times. And now they found a bullet that you've searched 1,000,000 times. Julie says it was bow season. So if he couldn't have accidentally shot her, there isn't even any proof it was a bullet that caused the damage to the skull. Could have been a tire iron. Is there proof that the skull portions belong to Teresa? No. Claire says, is there a Facebook page for Melissa? I looked, but wasn't sure which one. It's called the Official Justice for Melissa Kaluzinski Family Page. Stacy says, LOL, you go girl. Haley says, yeah, they're spitting it like the Averys filed it over in Gilters. I'll post you the screenshots. Oh boy. Paul says, Jax got cam. You need show how to use it. So we do this again. Oh yeah, Paul, we can, Paul, you and I can schedule something. Like right now I'm doing this live on my laptop, and the laptop does not allow me to bring on people from another location. So if we want to do one of these where I bring on Paul, I'll have to do it on my iPad. So Paul, you and I can talk about when you want to do a live with you and I, where I'm at home and you're at home if you want to do it. Or if we want to get together, we can do that too. Debbie says you need a GoPro camera when you go out and about so we can see your adventures. LOL. I have one. I have two, actually. So I'm an activist, and I go places and protest at times when people will get in my face. I've been hit. So I wear a body camera when I do those kinds of things. So I have two. So one of them, is official police grade. So even if somebody tried to delete my footage, it automatically gets uploaded somewhere. And you can't delete footage if you go to your computer and go look at it and delete it. So, yeah, I got stuff. Audrey says, is it just me that just heard that Kathleen has an expert that proved Stevens Pit was not the original burning location? She has experts that talk about the quarry. So, yeah, Stevens not, though that stuff was thrown in there. Paul says, now I do. Thanks, Jax. Carolyn says, and random half-naked guys chilling in bed. So, all right. So I'm down to the end of your questions and comments. So I'm going to be ending this now. We will forever be watching if the court responds. We will, get on right away. And the court's response is something that I will have to pay for to get, because Kathleen posts her stuff on her website. So that's how we're able to get it. I did ask today for it, when I was chomping the bit. And so I was told if I wanted today's filing, it would have cost me $90. So, and everybody told me, just wait. And so luckily Kathleen posted it early enough that now we got it and I didn't have to pay. When the court responds, I'll have to pay for that. So, so as soon as we find out the court has responded, we will get that and go live and post it and discuss it and all of that. In Melissa's case, we're also waiting to hear a response in her case. So this being MAM Gossip, if anything comes up in Melissa's case, we'll be bringing that to you live too. All right, there's more stuff here now. Valerie says, well, shoot, now Manitowoc will be at your house to investigate. Got to go get an alarm system. Oh, I have a camera system completely that surrounds my house and a pit bull. So come on. And my camera system records any movement, and I have a whole DVR system and everything. So, and my boyfriend's an NRA instructor with his concealed carry. So bring it on. Okay. Paul is saying, wait. What am I waiting for, Paul? All right. Paul says, wait, got more. All right, so maybe Paul's going to give you information on Melissa's case. So hold. Paul is not too great on the interweb, so it takes him a little more time to figure this stuff out on how to get stuff posted. So he might be also trying to get a link or something to post in here for y'all. So I did visit Melissa on Monday. So, and I know Paul and Cheryl, his wife, so both of Melissa's parents visited on Sunday. Okay, Paul says he will post. So we're waiting for Paul to post something. And Paul and Cheryl will be going to visit Melissa on Good Friday because Paul's disabled, so he can't work. So, but Cheryl works. And so they can't go during the week because Cheryl works. And so now they'll be able to go on Good Friday. And here's the thing, they never get to, in Melissa's prison, They only take pictures on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And so Cheryl is never able to get a picture with her daughter. So I visited Melissa 2 weeks ago on a Wednesday. And so Melissa and I took pictures, which she has to pay for. The money comes out of her commissary to get these pictures. And so we took a picture of Melissa and I together, and then a picture of just Melissa. And Melissa kept the picture of her and I, and then I took the picture home of Melissa and gave it to her parents. Now her parents are going to be able to go on Friday, on that Good Friday, and finally get a picture with Melissa. But as waiting for Paul to post things, this is a GoFundMe I do support. There is a GoFundMe for Paul and Cheryl that was started by Paul's sister, Helen. Helen is the one that runs everything on Melissa's case. She does her Facebook pages and the Twitter, and she does the GoFundMe. Paul is, as I said, is disabled. They've lost everything due to Melissa going to prison for a crime she didn't commit, because Paul had his own business, everything, and they lost it all. So they always ask for supporters to donate money into their GoFundMe so they can afford the gas and the tolls and money to put on her food card and stuff that they buy for Melissa to bring there. So you can find the link to her GoFundMe, either if there's a moderator here that can share that link to the GoFundMe in this thread. Otherwise, find the Melissa Facebook group, the official Justice for Melissa Kaluzinski family page. Helen's got the GoFundMe listed on there, or you can Google the Kaluzinski GoFundMe and you'll find it and help them to go visit Melissa. All right, people waiting for Paul. What did Paul posted a link? And I can't click on it as I'm live right now, so I don't know what the link is. Valerie says, I have 2 Germans as German Shepherd dogs, but that's primarily because I am a nervous Nelly. I've had 2 German Shepherds in my life. They are my favorite dog, and I so want another German Shepherd. And Valerie has a camera system. Heidi says, I have 2 Papillons. LOL, don't think they can do much, but I love my fur babies. Kristen has 2 cats, 2 horses, 2 chickens. I want chickens, and my town voted against them. I want fresh eggs. Kitty says, hopefully getting Melissa out will be a lot quicker than Stephen and Brendan. Kristen says she can't click on the link either. All right, well, we'll figure it out what Paul wants posted, and we'll get it posted in Gossip. Maybe not in this thread, but maybe, or in this live, but we can get it posted. Because, you know, the Kaluzinski case is really close to my heart, you know, as you all know that. And Melissa has been in prison for 10 years. So it's so sad, but excited for her parents to be able to go see her next week, and for them to be able to get a picture with their daughter. You know, that's so dumb that they can only do it on weekdays when not everybody, because, you know, it's a 3-hour drive for Paul, I think, because Paul lives a little further away than I do. So, you know, I'm a 2.5-hour drive, I think. And Paul is a half hour to 45 minutes away from me, depending on traffic. So it's a long drive. And Paul's got, you know, all these medical issues that it's hard for him to sit in a car that long. Then when you sit in the seats at the prison, they're horrible. And then you've got that drive back, you know, but Paul, I always compare Paul to Ryan Ferguson's dad, Bill Ferguson. You know, he is such a champion for his daughter, and he's not going to quit, and he doesn't shut his mouth even times when he should. And Paul, you know that I'm looking directly at you, Paul, if you're watching this right now, you know, but it's not my child that's in prison. So he's leaving no stone unturned. So can you blame him? So hold on. You're calling me while I'm live still.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm trying to get back online. For some reason, I'm on your page.
Yeah.
And I see you.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm hitting that thing in the middle.
Uh-huh.
And tell one of your moderators I'm having trouble. They need to let me back on. Something's wrong.
Do you want me to put you on speakerphone right now and you can just talk to people?
Yeah, that'll work.
Okay, hold on. All right, are you there, Paul?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, Paul's on speakerphone right now. Go ahead and say anything that you were wanting to say.
Anyway, what I was trying to put on there, because I was having problems. We got wind issues over here where I live at. Right now, the winds are about 50 to 60 miles an hour. I'm watching this stuff off the internet. So we keep popping on and off. And that's why if you see stuff that I'm writing and all of a sudden it stops, or if I post something and it's not all there, it's not because I'm having a hard time right now. I'm trying my damnedest to get this stuff done. And every time I do, your people had questions about that court stuff. So let's get to that real quick.
Yeah.
What usually happens on that is that it depends on the judge. They could give anywhere from 10 days to answer, depending on when the judge wants it in by. If a judge goes by the rules, it can take up to 90 days is the usual. Sometimes it could be 60, and then sometimes the judge, at her discretion, because she's got other cases, will sometimes wait quite a few months before they decide, or they could be real sticklers and they could just turn around and they could take and right after she files, answer right away, not giving her enough time to answer it. So, I've seen that in some of the filings and stuff that she's been doing. And it's just really strange that stuff like this happens in our court system, today. And, if anybody else has got any other questions, the official justice page for Melissa Kalyazinski is that's what you want to look for. You can either ask Helen, or you could ask Dawn or me, or even Jax, because Jax is one of our moderators there. And, we have no problem letting you on. But the one thing that we do, that Jax does allow on hers, but we really don't allow on ours, is that anything you say, basically, we've been letting some of the Stephen Avery stuff come on there, but we're trying to keep it basically because we're getting a lot of political stuff. Jax, you can explain what I mean by that.
Yeah, we don't, on Melissa's page, that is to be just like we do on the Stephen Avery Project page. The
Right.
Stephen Avery Project page is only about Stephen. We don't post the other cases in there, but I sneak some Melissa stuff in there because I want Stephen Avery Project people to care about Melissa's case. Melissa's group and page that Helen is the one that finds everything on, we only want Melissa stuff on there. So when you go there,
But explain to them, it's nothing against anybody. It's just that sometimes when you have pages such as the Stephen Avery's page, and you have the gossip page, and you got Melissa's page, and other pages that are done, it's that people turn around and just load it up.
right? They don't want then Melissa's stuff to get lost in all of, if people post other things and it gets bumped down the page. So that is to be only about Melissa. So even if you're people from Stephen Avery Project or Gossip and then you join Melissa's page, don't post about Stephen Avery over there. Only Melissa stuff and Kathleen Zellner stuff as it pertains to Melissa's case. Don't talk about any of Kathleen's other cases or anything, just Melissa.
Right, but we do post stuff about her other cases. Now, like, she just won another case. As you see, I just posted on there. She won another habeas corpus case in federal court. And, anything that she does and that she wins, we surely do put it on the page immediately as soon as we get it, because it shows the public that not like we said in some of the interviews, Kathleen is our rock. Without her, and I'm sure the same thing with Stephen Avery's family or any of these other cases that she does, without her, we wouldn't be able to do and be and say and do the things that we do regarding our loved ones without her doing the stuff that she has done, both past and future, that she's getting ready to do, because it keeps us going. A lot of people just don't understand. I mean, they all ask, how do you guys get through this? How do you do this? How does Stephen do it? How does Melissa do it? Well, it's not how we do it. It's that it's the person behind the scenes that helps us do it, because there was always somebody told me something in the Bible. There's patience and hope. Without patience, there is no hope. And with no hope, there is no patience. So those are the words that our families live and hold us together. And if anything ever happened to Kathleen or Doug or something, I'm telling you, we simply would just lose it, because they're the ones that keep us going. They keep our families going. They keep our groups going, and they keep the media growing, because when the lies come out on these wrongful convictions and everything that is done regarding of these cases and how they do them, I mean, once you start looking, you guys all know about the Avery's case, but once you start looking at the background of my daughter's case, there was a set of x-rays somebody called me up and told me about, and this is what started everything about Melissa's case, because then when it's Dr. Rudd, and maybe one day, Jax, we can get Dr. Rudd to come on with you. He said he'd be more than happy to talk to your public about, the Averys and different things about evidence and how the evidence regarding Melissa's case and, some of the other cases that Kathleen does, and how it seems like it's all connected together, because it seems like there's one person's name that comes up that's involved in a lot of these cases a lot of people don't know. And that's Dr. Montez and another guy by the name of Jeff Pathletic. These fellas worked for the state attorney's office and also worked for the county, but they were going out, they were teaching state attorneys across state lines, country lines, and even as far as I believe it was Hawaii, we found out through the paperwork. They were going in there and telling them how, even though that the individuals may not have committed a crime, that they taught them how at the last minute that they could bring evidence in and bring evidence and show the public how to get away, or show the state's attorney's offices how to get away with it. And they've done this. They've taught them the way to do it. Now, Dr. Montez, when you watch Blaming Melissa, you'll hear about Dr. Montez and everything else. But do you know to this date, and Jax already knows this, that man has started all the way in New York. And once he's found out, and this is no lie, folks, once that this doctor has been found out and that he has gotten caught, he stays into a place 5 to 7 years. We found this to be true. That's how long he stays. And he was only in town with Melissa's, and then he left to California. He is now working in California at, I think it's Santa Maria or Santa Cruz or something like that, as a pathologist, and teaching them, and he's running the pathology department. And it's just mind-blowing how this man has the courage. There's a name that they call doctors like this, and this is not a name, Jack, for all doctors. They call them a whore, a paid whore. And what it is at the very end of the cases, when they're getting ready to almost be done, they call somebody like Dr. Montez to come in there and lie about the case, because that's the last thing that the jury is going to hear. And he's going to pound it in their head. He's going to tell them like it is. And it happened with the Avery's case. It happened with Melissa's case. It happened with the exact same stuff that happened to a lot of these other cases that Kathleen has done. Even happened with Ryan Ferguson's case. So you've got to know. You've got to, if you really want to get involved and you want to know about these cases, look up the different things that the last individual that is on the stand that is saying and is telling the public and telling jurors what they say, and then think of Dr. Montez. Because that's the most important thing. That's the thing that he leaves in their mind. I mean, the stuff that this man did, and one other thing before I let you go, Jax, I want to tell the public, one thing that Dr. Montez did, Paul DeLuca, Dan Cummings, those are the two attorneys he had in the beginning, myself, Cheryl, and one of the sheriffs. They were just opening the doors. The jury had already came back and told us the bad news. And I kid you not, everybody, I've never in my God's life, I've never seen this. And I got up. This man come running down the hall as if he was in a Boston Marathon, running like he had his fire in his pants or something. And the guard or the sheriff goes, whoa, where you going? Where you going? And he says, I'm going in there. I heard the jury's back. I want to get in there. He says, well, you're late. The jury's gone. And all of a sudden, I see somebody yelling at him, this is all your fault, Manny. This is all your fault. And I walked up to him, and Paul DeLuca grabbed me by my Titan shirt, says, you better leave, because I don't know if I can hold him back. I wanted to rip him so bad, and to this day, there were other people who had cases against Dr. Montez. When the whistle was blown that this man's credentials, that he did not only flunk his boards as a doctor for forensic pathology, he flunked his boards as an anatomic forensic pathologist, and he flunked them 3 times and never took them again. So that's why when the evidence was always put in front of him, when about the blood work and everything on Melissa's case, and he didn't know what he was looking at, it was unfreaking believable that they even used this man. And they, for the evidentiary hearing and everything else, don't you think that the last guy that was on the stand, don't you think they would put him back on the stand in the evidentiary hearing, and they would use him to testify, showing that between him and Paul Foreman was one of the other people that were on the case, and he worked at the coroner's office. Don't you think that they would have put him on the stand to contradict what Mr. Foreman was saying, that these x-rays were taken and they were good x-rays and he did the work? And by the way, in Melissa's case, the man never did a second autopsy. It was all a lie. You'll hear about that all in called the Fight for Melissa. I want you to watch. I don't want to blow any of it, but I want you to watch the tape. It's called The Fight for Melissa. It's the very last chapter of 48 Hours, and God bless Aaron Moriarty and 48 Hours and CBS, people. But let me tell you something. When you see the stuff that comes out on this and what they did to Melissa, this is why Kathleen is who she is. She's got something in her that's been put into her by God that comes down, that somehow, some way, that the fear of God comes down and puts it into her hands, and she puts it out there, that the evidence is so overwhelming on how they frame anybody, including Stephen, my daughter, Melissa Kalazinski, or any of these people. Somehow, some way, she's got a way of getting to the truth. And you know what? That's why they're afraid of her. That's why they don't want her to get back in the court on the Avery's case, on Melissa's case, because the evidence that she has the knack of proving the innocence of all these individuals is astounding. I don't know how she does it, but I'm telling you, she's got the power of God in her. I kid you not. That woman must go to bed at night and pray every night that it's going to happen. And I kid you not, when she did Melissa's case, you'll even hear her. She goes, there is a God. And she says that on tape on 48 Hours, Jack. There is a God. Mm-hmm. And I believe that to this day. So, with Avery's case, there is a God. You watch. All these cases together, I wouldn't be surprised if the roof starts caving in once she leaves that courtroom when she's done with the Avery's case, and it all comes crumbling down on them.
Can you tell everybody where Melissa's case is now, what a habeas corpus is? And
okay, habeas corpus is when you go through all the ropes of going through Your first evidentiary hearing, then you go from evidentiary hearing, you go to, usually it's your district court for your appeal. And then when you go in, all the time she asks for arguments because she wants to make sure that the argument is put on black and white and paper so that anybody that gets it, they're not just going to read it, but they're going to hear it and see it, and it's going to be in front of them. And then usually when you leave the appellate court, then you go to what here in Illinois we call the Illinois Supreme Court, which would be the Supreme Court of Wisconsin, would be for Stephen. But she would, first of all, the way that it goes, where Stephen's case is, my understanding is the appellate court sent it back to the regular district court. Now the district court has to hear all this stuff. So then if they say no, they won't hear it, then she'll ask for leave to go to the appellate court. Then once she goes to the appellate court, if the appellate court doesn't want to hear it, then it'll go to the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Then from the Supreme Court of Wisconsin, like Melissa's was the Illinois Supreme Court, then if that gets denied, then she files the habeas corpus. And usually what happens there, in the federal court system, it'll get to a point to a judge, and once it's appointed to a judge, then after that, we sit and we wait for a court date. Now, we already knew the name of the judge and everything. We looked up everything. It's all on the space. So we're now just waiting. So, like right now, Kathleen is fighting for Stephen to get back into the court and let them hear this. Once she gets back in there, and then she gets like an evidentiary hearing, and she gets that, look out, everybody. I'd love to be in that courtroom, but I don't want to be in that courtroom once the court, everything is done, because I'm telling you, she's got that wrath of God behind her, and like I told you, she's like the rock. There's just something that she's got in her, and Jax, the way that the court system is nowadays, I think they're afraid of her. I think they are actually afraid of her, and that's why they're pushing her away and doing and saying what they're doing. I just was flabbergasted when I heard about that state's attorney calling up and leaving, don't give her anything, leaving that voicemail. I mean, that's kind of simply what happened on Melissa's, that when she brought in those experts to go through the coroner's computer, who got fired but the state's attorney. He says that he left voluntarily, but my understanding is the reason why he got fired or he left was because he got caught putting his fingers in a cookie jar trying to erase all them x-rays and everything, trying to say the guy that did it, well, the guy that supposedly did it was on vacation, so how could he do it? And the reason why we found out what happened, the guy left his email open. So what DeMartini was doing, he was sending emails to himself, making it look like it was Mike doing it, sending it to him, and it wasn't. Mike was on vacation, and they've got proof. They've got paycheck stubs and everything to prove that, and that's how she did this. She was able to get in there, get to that evidence, show that the evidence behind the evidence, it was not all falsified, but they tried to get rid of it. Now, what does that sound like? What they're doing here with the Aries case with the bones, they're trying to get rid of it. They gave it away. They gave it away to the family. They tried to get rid of it. Why would you get rid of an evidence knowing that you have to hold on to this evidence? And they thought that they were smart. The one thing that happened in Melissa's case is that after they did all this, the woman that did it turned around and her boss gave her a judgeship. She was appointed. Then because nobody went up against her, she was elected. So now she's got 2 years. So now my understanding is the next time she runs, there's opponents out there after they heard what they did and how they did it. I mean, God darn it, guys. She even took evidence home and shared it with her husband, who's a defense attorney. And he comes out in the hallway and tells me and Cheryl during the trial he was going to work with DeLuca and that he was sorry. He says, your daughter's innocent. I saw the evidence. She didn't do this. So it's ironic how Kathleen, how much they are afraid of this woman. God knows how they're afraid. Because why do you think Katz quit? Or I don't know if he quit or got fired, but do you see a pattern there? Why did he get fired or why did he quit? As soon as he found out that Zellner got the case, all of a sudden, boom, 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 she's finding all the evidence and it's all rolling out like on a little red carpet. But you know what? They're afraid of her. They don't want the public to hear it. They don't want you folks in Wisconsin or around the world to hear that not only did they fabricate evidence, but they lied, they hid evidence. And Jack, I'll tell you, that evidence that they may have, think about it. If there's a quarry next door and that's where that stuff was found, is there water over there? Did anybody ever go into water or take a diver and go look in that water to see if there's any other body parts there?
I have no idea, but yeah, there is water. There's water at the Avery salvage yard where the car was found, and then there's water in the quarry.
Oh my God! It could be, there could be stuff in that. And the thing is, I was told that not too far from where it's at, there's a cemetery. Somebody could have dug up bones and planted those bones at the quarry. I mean, if you look and see the way that these police officers and they do the stuff that they do, if they would have done their job correctly, but my understanding is they already had it in for Mr. Avery's because of the lawsuit that he already had going. So this was their way to turn around and really sink it into them. And one thing I do want to say before I let you go to your listeners, hey, Bobby, if you're out there, you know, if this was my family, I would take a blood test. I would take any kind of test that I could take to show that I was innocent from the crime. What are you afraid of, my friend? You need to get some balls in and take that blood work. You need to step up to the line for your family because remember, you only got one set of family. And when family means family, that's what family is all about. Family helps one another. You don't leave their side no matter what. Not one of my family members have ever turned their back on Melissa on the accusations because, you know what? My daughter's innocent. So is Mr. Avery's. What are you afraid of, Bobby? Why don't you step up to the plate, get some gonads, or like I said, get some balls, take the blood test. I'll tell you what, even take a lie detector test. And you know what? I bet you $1 on a dime, Bobby, if Kathleen Zellner would pay for that, I'm sure she would on all the testing and everything. What are you afraid of? Step up to the plate, my friend. That's your relative. That's somebody who is in your life you'll never have again. Step up to the plate and do the right thing. Prove that you are innocent. Prove you had nothing to do with this. If you do all that and everything shows that you're in the clear, I'll tell you what, I'll take your ass out fishing on Lake Michigan for salmon for an all-day charter. How about that? So get some gonads, my friend. Step up to the plate for your family. Do the right thing. Get in line and get the blood work done.
Well, yep, we all agree with that one.
Okay.
I will let you go because I'm also going to end this video. I have to go. I'm doing a podcast with Tammy from the Word Matter Publishing at 4 today.
Okay.
So,
but anyway, really,
yeah.
If the guy's got enough, Jax, if the guy is innocent and he has nothing to hide, anybody in that family has nothing to hide. What better way to show the Avery's mommy and dad that, hey, we had nothing to do with this, and instead of fighting about it, and instead of calling the police because of trespassing, instead of doing all the stuff that they've been doing, this family should be sticking together more than ever right now because of the hope of giving both of these gentlemen another chance outside of life and getting them out back where they belong and freeing them and doing the right thing. So if it was me and we had the chance and I had nothing to worry about, I would do this, Bobby. Really. You've got the chance to step up to the plate. I'm sorry if I sounded, pretty mean and angry, but Bobby, you got to understand, you got a family member that's in prison for something he didn't do. Do you ever think that once that Stephen got freed, that maybe someday, some down the line, that as you guys doing a reunion, you could all look back on this and saying, hey, you know, we were through a lot. I did this for you, Stephen. And look at you're out. We're a family again. We can all rest easy. We could all just start over again and put your hand out there to Stephen and put your hand out there to Brendan and shake their hands and say, hey, I was just scared. I just was afraid to do it. Pick up that phone, call Kathleen Zellner. Her number is 630-955-1212. Pick that phone up, give her a call, tell her, Bobby, say, hey, look, Kathleen, let's bygones be bygones. I want to help you get my family out. I want to be there for my family. I want to do what's right. You know, these officers in Wisconsin and what they did to our family, man, go get them, Kathleen. I'm right here with you. I want to help. I want to do what's right. I want to be there. I'm ready to do this. And that goes for Carla, too, and all the other ones. You guys all need to come together. Enough of this thing about money situations and everything else. You guys all need to come together as a family, because you want to know something? It's a family that helps a family, that keeps a family together. And like I told you earlier, it's patience and hope and patience. Those are the two things that God put there for us. And without one, there isn't the other. So get out there, get it done. Bobby, pick up that phone, do the right thing. All right, Kix.
All right. Bye, Paul. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right. Bye. Paul Kaluzinski, everyone. So, all right. So I'm going to end this now because it's now 2:41 p.m. my time, and I'm supposed to be doing this podcast or whatever it is with WMP Justice Review that starts at 4 my time. So I guess give me a little break before I have to do a whole nother thing on camera. And of course, look at how fancy I am. No makeup. My hair's just thrown up in this thing. See, I so care. But yeah, so that's it for today. If we hear from the court, we'll go live as soon as we hear about that. Or if Kathleen obviously tweets anything about all this. And then if I hear anything from Stephen, and I'll be visiting with him soon. And so we'll talk about that as well. So, all right, I'm out. See you next time. Thanks again, Paul, for coming in and helping us with stuff that we don't know. Bye.